This is a Counterform demo. First thing that we're going to do is we're going to open a browser. I'm going to open Chrome here at the bottom. And we're going to go to our PVCC homepage, pvcc.edu. Then we're going to open My PVCC. And once we're in My PVCC, open Canvas. Once we're in Canvas, I'd like for us to open Typography 1. And we'll scroll down to Week 2. And we will go to our Counterform demo. Notice the video below. Now I'm going to download the file. You can right-click or hit Control-click and save link as to your desktop. And our desktop is going to be our workspace. I'm going to save it. And once we're done, we can X out of this window. Now the next thing I'd like for us to do is open Illustrator. You can go open it in your toolbar, or you can open it in Applications. When you're opening it, I want you to reset your preferences by hitting Command-Option-Control-Shift if you are on a Mac. If you're on a PC, you can hit Control-Alt-Shift, and we're going to open it. Might take a while for it to open. Keep holding your keys down. If you let go too soon, it won't reset your preferences. Once we're in here, I'd like for us to go up to our top under File, and I'd like for us to open our file. And select the one from our desktop. And let's inspect together this project. Now we can zoom in hitting our Command equals, or Control equals if you're on a PC. And you can use your space bar to navigate. Notice that this is a sans serif experiment. This is Futura by Paul Renner. And you can see I'm exploring the angularity and geometry of the forms. Also, you can see this overlap of the stroke. A nice tool that we can use in Illustrator is the Exclude tool. It's not necessary for this project. We can keep them as solids, or we can show the overlap. But let's do an experiment here, and let's copy this project. Next thing I'd like for us to do is I'd like for us to go to Window, and I'd like for us to go to our workspace, which is going to be Typography. Once we're in our Typography workspace, what I'd like for us to do is grab our artboards and open a new artboard. Now, I don't like how close these artboards are together because sometimes we like to let these characters go off of the canvas. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that my first artboard is locked under layers. And under layers, you can see that it is locked. And then what I'd like for us to do is to make sure that our new artboard is selected and go to our artboard tool here on the left side. And we are going to move it over a little bit. Now you're going to get a pop-up window that says any hidden or locked objects will not be moved, and we want these to not be moved. All right, that gives our artboard a little bit more space. So what we can do is we can go to our Type tool now, and now let's try to do a similar exploration like our AV4 in Futura. Before we get started doing our copy of this AV4, I'd like for us to go up to our preferences in Illustrator, and I'd like for us to go to Type, and make sure you turn off your Fill New Type objects with placeholder text. And we hit OK. Now if you're on a PC, you're going to find preferences at the bottom there under Edit, where you can turn off your placeholder type under Type. All right. So what we're going to do first is we're going to go to our Type tool. Make sure our Type tool is hit. You can just hit T on your keyboard as well. And what we're going to do is click into open space, and we're going to hit our A. And I'd like for us to click again, and you might have to double click to get it to reselect. And we're going to hit our V, and we're going to hit our 4. Once we have all these characters, I'd like to make them 72 points. You can just use your black arrow key, and you can find your black arrow key by hitting V on your keyboard. And we can select out a marquee around them and make them 72 points at the top. Now, if you don't have a toolbar at the top here, because you haven't hit typography, you can also get your points right here under character, and we can make them 72 points there. Now, you should have installed your fonts from the last project, from the monogram experiment, or you should know how to set up your typefaces by going to Adobe Fonts. I'm going to show you another way to do this here. So for this project, I'm going to choose Futura. And I'm going to choose my true typeface under medium. Now that's what I want. That's the typeface that I provided you. Now if you want to go to Adobe, you can also hit your drop-down menu. And what it will do is when you get your drop-down menu, you can get Find More. And it's activating Adobe Fonts right now. It might take a second because it's linking to the internet. And it will give you a list. It will start with numerics and it will go into alphabetical. If you want to find a specific typeface, you can just type in Futura here, and you'll get a list. Now for our project, we're only using medium, so you can add it there. You can see it will have a check mark, and I've already installed these. But if you haven't installed them, it's going to make you install them individually. You can also go to Info right here, and it will link you to the internet, and will take you right to Adobe Fonts. And you can activate the fonts. Now it might ask you to sign in to Adobe if you're not already signed in. And so I can go here and I can activate the fonts. And it will ask you to OK it. And I've already done that. So I am going to X out of here. And let's go back to our project and let's arrange it as we see it in our example over here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in. You can hit Command equals. And you can use your spacebar to navigate. If you're on a PC, you can hit Control equals. And this is how my AV4 looks. Now I made the top of the 4 or the slant of the 4 match the crossbar. And what I'm going to do here is turn it on its side. And I'm kind of making sure that it aligns a horizontal line. And I went down right into that crook of the top of the counter of the 4. And that's really what my experiment should look like. I believe the V is a little higher up. And what we're going to do now is going to select all with our black arrow key, and we're going to turn it on its side so that the A is vertical. And what we're going to do, and make sure that you are turning from the outside of your marquee, so you get your turn tool, and make sure that it's up and down, vertical. And what we're going to do here is we're going to hold our Shift key. Now, it's really important for us to understand that we aren't going to stretch type here. Now, it's really easy to stretch type and just drag out. We don't want to stretch the type. We want to identify that this is Futura, and we want to see our typeface. So I'm going to hold my Shift key and I'm going to drag out. Now, I'm going to zoom out by hitting Command minus or Command dash or Control dash, and I can hold my Shift key and click and drag out. Now I'm going to drag out so that's approximately the same size. Now you can see here that this layer over here on the left side is locked, so I can actually precisely line them up if I really wanted to. For the case of this, I'm doing the best I can, and it's not really necessary. Notice that that angle is a little off. There we go. Perfect. And that's my approximate version of the one we see on our left side. So once we're done with that, what I'd like for us to do is kind of explore this exclude or the Pathfinder tool. And we're going to grab our 4 and our A. Now if you're doing all of the letter forms, you would want to drag a marquee around all of them. I'm not including the V for this one. And we're going to go to our Pathfinder tool. Now if you haven't opened your Pathfinder tool, or you don't have it open, what we can do here is we can go to Window, and we can open up our Pathfinder tool and make sure that it's open. What I'd like for us to do next is go to our Option key, and if you're on a PC, you're going to have to hit your Alt key, and we're going to click it so that we can see the exclusion. Now if you use your white arrow tool, I can grab an individual character. I'm going to grab the 4. I'm going to use my arrow keys to kind of move them up and down, and to make sure that it's pretty close to the original. And that's looking pretty good to me. So this is pretty much my finished version of following the original example. What I'd like for us to do next before we move further is lock the information on those other artboards. So I'm going to lock all of those. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new artboard. I'm just going to say add. And remember, we want to move that artboard so that it has a little bit more space. And I go OK because I don't want to move any of the other artboard's objects because they're locked. And that way I have a good open workspace. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to make the background black. remember for this project we can have white characters on a black background, and this gives us kind of an idea of what we'll be doing for our experiments. So let's grab our rectangle tool. You can hit M on your keyboard to grab your rectangle tool, and I'm just going to drag out a rectangle or a box over top of our current canvas. If you're curious as to what this looks like, you can use your opacity tool at the top and kind of see where it's located. And then we can hit V or grab our black arrow key and kind of move it and make sure that it's centered. Once it's kind of on there, I don't like to move it. I like to keep it stationary. So I usually lock that layer. You can also lock the layer by hitting Command 2 or Control 2. And notice it just automatically locked that layer. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to start building more letters on top, except this time I'm going to make them white letters. So when I click here and I'm going to choose a traditional typeface, which is going to be Baskerville because we already did a sans serif, I'm going to choose Q and it's going to be my capital, except this time I'm going to change it to be white. And you can use these color tools at the bottom here. And I'm going to make sure that my stroke is none. So that is what my letter form should look like. For my case, I'm just going to drag out another one. And I'm going to make this one a S. And I'm going to drag out another one. And I'm going to make that one a question mark. And notice that these are still in Futura. I don't want to choose Futura, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select a marquee around all the text, and we are going to choose under our character, or you can go to the top here. I'm going to choose Baskerville, because we're going to explore different types of typefaces. Baskerville. And in this case, I'm going to choose italic. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to enlarge these a little bit so I can start working with them. And I'm going to overlap my S, and maybe I'm going to play with the different shapes of the Q here and the question mark, and maybe make them overlap a little bit. Now notice that all of my points are snapping. In the case of this individual piece, I might not want them to snap. If that's the case, you can always go to View and you can turn off snap there. And that will allow you to more freely organize these. And I'm thinking this is looking pretty good. I might pull down that S a little bit so it's a little bit more compressed. So I'm getting the top of that serif and the bottom of this serif to kind of mimic one another. And that's looking good. I like that tail of the Q kind of linking into that question mark. All right, so once we're done with this, what we can do is we can drag out a marquee around these with our black arrow key and hold our Shift key. Remember, we're not going to stretch type. That is not allowed in this project because we want to identify it as Baskerville. And we're using italic. And hold our Shift key and we're going to drag out. Now one thing that's hard with the black canvas is that we can't see the edge of the canvas that well. Just make sure that you see that little line that we're seeing at the top. And we're going to drag the tail of the Q to the other side of the canvas. And I like it kind of going off a little bit. So we focus on the curves. It's more about the counterform and less about the strokes themselves. And then I might center them a little bit. All right, so this is my finished version. Now, again, if you want to use your exclude tool, you can for this project. It's not necessary. I kind of like seeing these solids, and it really emphasizes counterform versus form. And if you want to make a exclusion, you can. You just grab all of the letter forms, and then we go to our Pathfinder tool again, and we can exclude. And you hit Option if you're on a Mac, and Alt if you're on a PC, and you can kind of see where these overlap. I'm not partial to this one for this particular experiment, so I'm going to just hit Command Z or Control Z if you're on a PC, and go back. And this is my final version here. So what I'd like for us to do at the end here is just kind of save as a PDF. I can hit, for me, I'm just going to hit Command Save, or if you're on a PC, hit Control Save, and I'm going to X out of it. What I'd like for us to do at this point is kind of inspect this. So if I double click on my PDF, it should open Acrobat or some sort of preview on your PC or Mac. I'm going to double click and you can kind of see how this looks in comparison to the original. And it's pretty close. We're not going for precision here, and this is the new one I made. on the black background. And we can X out of that. Just wanted you to kind of take a look at it. All right, so before we get started working on this project, I want to make sure that you guys know how to set up a document. Remember, we're going to do 8 experiments exploring the different typefaces. We're going to explore old style, transitional, modern, Egyptian, and sans serif. We can also explore italic. So I want you to have that flexibility to explore a bunch of these and then choose your top 4 for submission. So what we're going to do is we're going to open a new file, or Command N, or Control N if you're on a PC, and we are going to open a print file at the top here, and make sure that we are setting it up to inches, and we're going to set up our 6x6 document, and we're going to hit 8 artboards, and we hit Create. And again, I want to make sure that these artboards aren't too crunched together. Notice that they're very close together. So if we had like a letter kind of going off the edge, it might go into the other artboard. So I want us to go to our artboard tool over on the left side. Just make sure that you have a good amount of space between the artboards. And once we have it kind of set up where we want, then we can kind of line up these ones below. And I like to kind of use my snap tool and my smart guides to kind of like help me align them in a way that is a little bit more organized. It's not really essential when we're outputting these. It's just for our artboard and our workspace. So what we're going to do next, and I think this is a good idea for the students to do, is we are going to go to our rectangle tool, or M tool, and we are going to add our black backgrounds first so that we kind of have a workspace. I like to add, since we have 8, I like to have 4 or 3 just so that we have some different options. So I'm going to add 4 different boxes here, and I'm going to drag out a box here, and you can hit your space bar to make sure that it's centered, and I'm going to just make sure that I don't have a line on the edge, and you can just flip your fill tool here so that it fills in black as your default is white with a black stroke. But I want no stroke on these. And what we're going to do is we're going to get our black arrow tool, and you can hit Command C, Command V and just copy and paste these, or you can go up to your edit tool and copy and paste here, or you can use your Option key or your Alt key, and we can just drag out new ones. And that's what I think I'm going to do for the case of this. And I'm going to do one more. So we have 4. And that's looking pretty good to me. And what I like to do is under layers there is I just like to lock all these layers so that when we're working on our next project, we can just kind of really start developing these immediately. And then what I'd like for us to do is just kind of get into the mode of doing our experiments. Notice here I'm going to type my AV4. Now I'm using the AV4. You do not have to use AV4. I want you to use any character in any numeric form or character in the alphabet to create your letter form interactions. So make sure that you just have a capital, a lowercase, and a numeric form or a special character like a question mark, quotation, etc. But let's zoom in here. And I'm going to select these and make these future again. And I'm going to make them medium. And I'm going to make them 72 points. 72 points is an inch. And I really like the way this 4, the apex of the 4 and the crossbar of the A. Now notice that I'm struggling with this, if I zoom in, notice I'm struggling with kind of lining these up with the snap. You can always turn off your snap or turn it back on, or your smart guides, we can turn those off as well. And I can kind of get it a little bit more to how I think they would look best. And that's looking pretty good to me. That's a good experiment. Really exploring the angularity, also the pointiness of this typeface. And so maybe I'll just kind of center that one. All right. That looks like a nice experiment. Now again, you can do white letter forms and numeric forms on a black background, and all we have to do is copy and paste or use our Option key or Alt key, move them over, change them to white, make sure that you don't have a stroke on them. No stroke on our typefaces, only solids, but we can use our Pathfinder tool. Now, it's up to you if you want to use your Pathfinder tool. You don't have to. And if we go to our Pathfinder tool over here, we can use our exclude tool. And I'm going to hit my Option key. If you're on a PC, hit your Alt, and you can see the overlap. Now, I don't think it's necessary for this particular one, but this is what I would do for your final workspace. And when you're done and you're ready to choose your top 4 of your 8 experiments using these different typefaces, old style, transitional, modern, Egyptian, and sans serif, what we can do is then go to our artboards, and you can drag the artboards that you don't like into the trash right here. And then you'll have your final workspace, which would be your final 4. All right, if you have any questions, please reach out to me, and good luck with this project.